Hi, everybody, and welcome here. I am so excited that you have chosen to listen in. I'm here with a good friend, Kimberly Talmey. We met 2017. We both were taking a goals program or course, and we just kept journeying together ever since. And it's been amazing. Um, I'm going to tell you more about Kimberly later, but I think we'll just start with hearing a bit about her grief journey and the things she's learned through that. And then, yeah, we'll see what happens. It's going to be great. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being willing to share with us your journey. And I know, obviously, talking about grief is never easy. And did I know for myself, as I get to share things I've been learning through my grief waves or different tools that have helped me, that I find that it's redeeming. It redeems the pain, and that has been a gift to me from God. So, could you share with us a bit about your journey with grief so far?
Thanks, Andrea, for inviting me and for allowing me to be here and to talk about grief, which is something I'm very passionate about. I know that sounds weird, but um, I've had a lifetime of grief and loss events. Not all loss is through death. There's loss of all kinds out there, and everybody experiences loss. But I don't think everybody knows that they need to grieve that loss. So that's one of the things that drew me to grief coaching, actually, was through my healing journey through depression and anxiety and some mental illness issues and being delivered of alcoholism. I had a lot of grief in my life, but I didn't know it was grief. It was, I had all this healing and these fantastic things were happening in my life, but I always felt sad. I always this heaviness and this deep, deep longing for something inside that I could never quite get over, and it colored everything. It made everything gray, even good things. So I went on another discovery and realized that what I was dealing with was actually grief. I had never grieved the losses of my life, the events, the main things, the celebrations that should have been there that weren't. And it left a huge mark on my life. So.
Yeah, I love how you brought out the difference, like I guess the relationship between grief and loss, right? And how people can connect. Grief is like, I lost a person, and the reality is that loss is, it's broader, that we grieve so many things in life. It could be moving, it could be a pet that passes, it could be a loss of work, so much loss. And that, yeah, that you were able to articulate even that you couldn't necessarily call it what it was until later on, and that how it definitely colored other aspects of your life. Yeah, for sure. That's been part of my experience too. Um, how does your experience of grief compare with what you learned about grief as a child?
Hmm. Well, as a child, I was very close with my grandma, and she passed away when I was about 4 years old. And looking back on it now with adult eyes and with some training, I realized that my parents just were not equipped to handle grief or loss of any kind. So when she passed, I was excluded. And I'm still dealing with the anger of that as an adult with my relationship with, especially my mom. I didn't realize that I was that angry about it for so long. And even though I've been trying to move through it, I couldn't get past it because I lost out on not just the loss of my grandma, which was significant in my life at that point, but I lost out on the saying goodbye and being part of the whole celebration and moving through the process of a funeral and what that all meant. Even at a 4-year-old level, I knew I needed to say goodbye to my grandma, and being excluded from it actually left a real heavy disconnect for the rest of my life. I never cried after 4 years old. I never engaged in loss. I ran from pain and grief of any kind, sorrow, being uncomfortable in conversations. I would just shut down and walk away. And I didn't realize the depth of the meaning of actually having that service and walking through it and saying goodbye to people that we love, even as a child. It's important to not just celebrate the life, but celebrate the death and mark that progress. So as an adult, I didn't have any ability to cope with losses at all until I dug in and did some real good research and went to school, and I learned a lot of things. It's been a really intense few years of growing into what grief is and what grief looks like and what's normal, what's not normal grief, like what's healthy and what's not healthy, and just being able to accept that. So it was a profound question when you asked it. It's something
Yeah. Well, and I think I love what you said about, well, I mean, it's sad, but I totally get what you said about your parents weren't able to like equip you with it because they were working out of a different paradigm, right? That this, well, kids need to be away from this. This is whatever. And how now that you're able to see how damaging that is, that actually you needed, like you said, your 4-year-old self knew that you needed to say goodbye to grandma, and were being excluded from that. Wow. I think that's true of a lot of people's stories, that they're, and even grace for our parents in different generations, that that's how they were raised, right? They were just continuing with that, but to acknowledge
yeah.
that moving forward, that's not what we want to do, right?
No,
So
and it's a whole culture shift.
right,
Right?
also true. Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious. I don't know if I asked this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. When what? So you grew up with this in this childhood where you weren't really allowed to feel, and which caused you to run from feelings and things like that. What was the turning point when you were like, I need to research this. I want to dig into this. What is this? What's making my world gray? Was there a chain of events that took place, or a specific event, or something that you'd be?
It was about 2 years ago, actually, shortly after we had met and started that group. I was in Saskatchewan and I was sitting in a hotel room surrounded by these beautiful old sandstone buildings that I just love being a part of the culture. And I was connecting to this real deep, dark, heavy sadness still. And I was like, I felt such a lack of motivation. And it was sitting there and pondering that, thinking I probably needed to go back onto antidepressant medication just because I thought I might have had a low level of depression that I just couldn't get through. And some prayer and contemplation, and I reached out to my counselor and we talked, and the realization of that whole conversation and in inner looking at my inner heart and where I was at, I realized that through all the losses in my life, and there had been some deaths and some people that were close to me and some pets, and like there was lots of things, I never actually truly grieved any of it. I went through the process of healing, and I went through the process of getting educated, and I went through all these things that made me a better person, but I never grieved it. It never even occurred to me that grief would be attached to these things. And I thought, oh, I'm grieving. And when I made that realization, it was almost like this whole heaviness just lifted away. And it was like, so then I began to learn what grief was and what grieving looked like and what healthy grieving incorporated, and just took me down this journey of feeling and being sad and being okay with it, and giving myself permission to feel the losses and engage. And some days I have total joy and some days I'm sad, and it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. That is, how true is that, that we can process on a certain level but not let it go deeper, right? Like we can do the mental work of
Mm-hmm.
learning about the thing, but actually to make the connection of body, mind, and soul, and be like, oh, I need to actually feel this. That is the whole, and the freedom it brings. It's like such a weird dance between
It,
brutal ache and pain to like space to continue. Like I've found that true again and again as I've tried to, you can feel an onslaught of grief waves coming in you, and I've been able to hold them at bay for a certain amount, and it's so much work and it hurts to do that even. And then when I let them hit me and I weep and I'm struggling and I'm a mess, there's still, I on the other side of that, there is that, oh, okay, now I can breathe again. And it's a wild dynamic of what grief looks like. Hmm.
Yeah.
So have you found certain tools or strategies that are helpful for you when those grief waves hit?
Not to suppress them. It's the largest. Giving myself permission to feel them. Yeah, it has to be appropriate, and you can't do it in the middle of your workplace, but acknowledging them and mentally acknowledging that they're there can actually relieve some of the pressure of them. And just knowing in your mind that you're going to allow yourself a specific time, whether it's after work or the drive home after work, or you're going to go for a walk after supper, like actual scheduling in time to let yourself feel them, giving yourself that permission can lessen the intensity when they come, because you know that you're going to get to it. They're not just going to sit there and keep adding up so that you feel like you're going to drown in them, and then you don't want to go near it because it feels so overwhelming.
Yeah. Okay.
But I found if I face them, even in the middle of a coaching session, when my own grief it gets touched on, if I acknowledge it, even if I acknowledge it to my client that, oh, that touched my heart, my sadness or my sorrow, yeah, it helps. It just becomes then part of the process that you're going through in that moment as well.
Hmm.
The biggest thing is just giving myself that permission,
Yeah,
to do it, and then figuring out what works for you and your life situation, where you're at, the circumstances you're in.
Wow. So just to allow it to be personal, hey, that it's your permission to be you in that moment with that pain, and then acknowledge it and then walk it out as you need to. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a part of your day with you. So my goal as a grief coach is to be able to get you to access joy and grief at the same time. That are not mutually exclusive of each other, but they're actually inclusive of each other. So you can be totally sad and crying at one moment and totally happy in the next moment, and have in your mind going, wow, this makes no sense at all, but that's grief.
Yeah, totally. I can laugh because I know that, and how many times I would ask my husband, I think I might be crazy because how is this like hello? And yet there is that reality of you can grieve, you feel other emotions while you grieve, and that is normal and good. And but I
Yeah.
like how you were talking about in coaching how you teach people how to access that joy, which is huge, right? Because I can remember times when grief waves hit so strong, I just thought I'm just going to drown. Like this is the one I drowned in because I'm not going to be able to get through it. And and then of course I did, but emotionally, mentally, had I had an anchor that would be, what is my, how had I been taught that tool, that would have been awesome. Which actually leads us to the next question really well. What do you wish you would have known before your grief journey began? Is there...
I wished I would have known that my anger was actually grief, unprocessed grief.
Hmm.
I wished I would have known that my emotional overwhelm and depression was actually unprocessed grief that was held back so long that it became other illnesses instead of being grief. I wish somebody had told me that while I went through the process of depression and healing.
Mhm.
That were necessary processes for me, but just to know that there was grief involved in all of that, I would have accessed the way I went through it differently. I would have learned more about my emotions and the sadness and the heaviness and just that overwhelming wave of pain and whatever. Knowing that that was grief would have helped me process and just know that, oh, this is normal. This is not a symptom of something else. This is grief. Okay, how now what do we do with it?
Right.
And being free to go through the grief process.
Yeah. So I'm curious, this just popped in my brain too. Sorry, the extra questions. I'm curious when grief changed from like a dirty word, like you mentioned before that you would run away from grief or pain, to like to wanting to know that this is grief, that my grief, like that obviously now it's a safe word or a necessary word. I don't know what adjective you use to describe it, but
It wasn't a moment or an aha. I wished it was, but it's not. It was a process.
yeah.
The more I accepted that what I was going through was grief and grieving, and the more I learned about how to grieve properly and like how to be, it was normal to feel the way I was feeling. It just became more and more positive. It was okay. It's okay to have all these negative emotions in my life and yet feel happy and content with being a housewife. Or it was normal to have a moment where I was so overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't get out of bed or get off the couch because life was just too hard. And then the next day get up and bounce and be full of joy and exuberance for life and go on nature walks, and that was normal. Like it just became this process where the more I let the process the pain through and was in touch with the pain, the less the pain was having that influence on my life, and it became this intertwined piece that became woven together with the good positive things. And it took time. It took time, and it took allowing myself to do it, and somebody normalizing it for me, saying it's okay, this is what grief is, and it's okay to feel how you're feeling, it's okay to think what you're thinking, it's okay to ponder those things, but it's not okay to live there. You have to come up and out of it. Or you need to do that, whatever is personal to you.
Right. And I'm curious if that process happens naturally at some level when we do allow our emotions out. I don't know if that would go with any of the research you've done or training, but it's like if once we learn that we're allowed to feel those things, and like you said, they that natural process of them intertwining into our lives and journeying with us, then you can move forward because you can't, because it's not, you're not fearing that pain and it's not controlling you, right? So it's that neat dance that it just doesn't blows your brain when you see the connections of what God has, how God has allowed us. Like obviously we needed a way to process all the hard things down here, right? And that it is there for us. But if it was packaged incorrectly as a kid, and even the reality of grief sucks in the sense of that it's not fun to have as a part of your life, but as it turns from it sucks to it's actually a reality that's going to be here whether I embrace it or not, then it changes to like, okay, this is a part of being human, this is something I have to deal with, and I can either face it or and journey with it or battle it and stay stuck. So wow, thank you.
I think
oh sorry you go.
I think if we look at the life of Jesus, I studied his life extensively because Jesus wept. His friend Lazarus had passed, and Jesus wept. He was heartbroken. He lost his best friend. It really touched me, and I discovered this about 6 or 7 months ago, that Jesus wept. But then if you read in the Bible, the stories are so linear that Jesus wept this moment, but the next moment he's doing all these miracles, and life just went on, and you see all these things happening, and you think, well, Jesus wept in that moment, but then he will carry on with life. And that's very much similar to what we're finding now at the funeral home, that people don't want to stop and process their loss. They weep and then they move on, but they're missing fundamental, deeper issues there. Jesus wept, but he was fully human, so he was sad. He lost his best friend, so he went through a major loss. If you pull apart the story deeper, Jesus took 4 days to go to his friend to resurrect him. It wasn't something that happened instantly. He took the time to mourn that loss, you know, and he walked with his disciples. I love the series The Chosen because it really shows the human side of who Jesus is, and he's relational. So he felt the losses and he had all these negative emotions going on inside him, but he took that time, that 4 days. It could have taken him a day to get to Lazarus, but he took 4 days. You know, he took that time to breathe, to loss, to mourn, to grieve what he had lost in his life. And then he did the miracle.
Yeah. Wow. So he
Yeah.
modeled what we have permission to do, right? To take the time to feel what we need to feel. And then he does the miracle of bringing us back to life in a different way, right? To redeem us through that pain even. Wow. So what have you learned during this journey with grief that's given you more freedom?
Giving me more freedom. Grieving itself has given me more freedom. Allowing myself to grieve, other than hearing the grief in other people in their story, and they haven't connected those dots for themselves, has given me freedom. Just hearing, be able to say, yeah, that makes me really sad, and I want to weep with you, is a huge freedom. It's being able to sit with somebody in their pain, because feeling my pain gives them freedom to sit with their grief.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful in the sense that freedom is contagious, right? That's just what blew up in my brain. I'm like, freedom is contagious. As I model that I'm allowed to sit here in your sorrow with my sorrow, that enables you to release your sorrow, and together we become more free. Oh, wow. Oh, that's incredible. Thank you.
We have all these things that we do in our lives, all these groups and fun things to connect on a level of joy, right?
Totally, yeah.
But grief works the same way. We can connect on a level of grieving and sorrow and hurt, and have that same kind of support with each other.
That's true. I did feel that when my brother passed away, and people, like, just people that I kind of knew would come up to me and start telling me about people that had passed in their lives, and it was just like, it was weird. But it was like, I think I'm in a club. I think I just joined a club by accident. Like, and yet it was freeing in the sense that we're allowed to talk about who has passed. And so it gave me that sense of belonging, even though I definitely didn't want to sign up for the group. But yeah.
Yeah. But we're all going to sign up for the group. This is the
Exactly. You just have this myth in your mind that maybe I can avoid that. It's like, actually you can't. You just don't know when or how, or maybe you haven't acknowledged that you already are in the group, right? Goodness knows, I moved a lot as a kid and things like that, for sure. So as we wrap up here, what is something that you would like to say that to those who are aching right now?
It's okay. It's okay not to be okay. Acknowledging it, and acknowledging that you need support, or that you need just a safe place to talk, or just decompress what you're feeling, just to somebody to sit with you in the grief waves, just giving yourself permission that that's okay to need that support and help, especially in this time of social distancing.
Right.
We don't have those connections. And even in that social distancing, there's a grief that everybody's feeling, and they might not realize it as grief, but we're all feeling grief on some level, because we're wired to have that face-to-face connection for the feel-good hormones that release joy and make us feel good. We're not getting that now, so we're getting all the negative emotions, and we still need those connections. So I encourage anybody who's feeling low or just down or just off. It could be a little bit of grief just coming in just from the lack of that face-to-face. So
Definitely. So true. Yeah, for sure. So Kimberly Talmey is amazing, obviously. Clearly, you have just met her at a deep level. And I just thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty. And Kimberly offers a tremendous gift to our community by having a coaching and consulting, or coaching and counseling ministry. And it's called Essentials to Grief Transformation. And I think that is such a powerful business name, Essentials Grief Transformation. Because if we all have to go through grief, why would we not want the transformation that can come through grief, right? So if you are feeling like, man, I think I'm ready to deal with this gray in my life, man, I would like to go deeper and learn more with someone who is able to maybe teach me some tools or just help me learn how to connect with my pain in a way that I can also connect with joy, then you want to connect with Kimberly. I will get her information from her, and we'll make sure that that is a part of the email that goes out. And also, Kimberly, we can find you on Facebook. Is that true? You have a page there?
Yes, I do. It's called Kimberly Talmey Coaching on Facebook.
Okay, cool.
I have a website that's called Kimberly Talmey Coaching as well.
Okay, awesome. Way to keep it simple for us. Thanks. Kimberly, also, do you do like especially during social distancing, do you actually do coaching or counseling via Zoom or online?
Yes,
Awesome.
yes, I do. I have a Skype, Zoom, Facebook Messenger, however you're comfortable meeting with me online. I can meet you there.
Awesome. Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you so much for coming today and for all that you've shared with us. And we just say a blessing over you and all that you will speak to and all that you will love on and all that you will lead into deeper freedom. And yeah, that's all for this time, folks. We have a few more interviews that will be this month, and I hope you'll enjoy them on Facebook. If not, you can, if you miss one, there's also the link you can sign up for them, and I'll send them all to you later on this month. We also have, I'm going to do a workshop on grief that shares a bit more of my journey and 3 principles that I learned through my grief journey. Yeah, like Kimberly said, letting my emotions out. We'll go into a bit more of how do we do that? What does that look like? And letting others in and making sure they're the right ones. And also just my brain stopped working for a little minute. But just the 3 just different principles are really practical. People who were in my workshop last year just were like, wow, I just felt like I was allowed to be where I was at, and I just thank you for that. And it was interesting because one lady's like, and you had humor while you shared about grief, and so that was a blessing to her, which she's like, I don't know if that makes sense. So she wrote down on her thing, but I'm like, yeah, it makes sense because I have been transformed by my grief, therefore I can share it freely with you. So if you'd like to be a part of that, there's also a link above. And that is all I have for today. So take care and God bless.
Thank you for this opportunity, Andrew.
You bet.